And a welcome here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. Happy to be here with you every Monday through Friday between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I very much appreciate your patience here this morning as we are still kind of on the road. I get to do something cool here. I get to broadcast from familiar digs here in Syracuse, New York, my childhood home. I get to do that. So I'm broadcasting here. Yesterday was fun traveling. It was interesting travel, I should say. So we were out there. I was out there traveling yesterday night, back from Texas and back from the college football playoff semifinal round. Of course, I was down there at the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic and traveled last night. And in my travels last night, we had a delayed flight, and then thankfully my connection flight delayed. So because I had a double delay, I was able to make the second flight a little bit better there. But the second flight and that being delayed and then having to get my bag and all of that, I did not go to bed until after 2 o'clock in the morning. And for those of you that have been watching the show this past week, you know I've been under the weather. So put all of that together in a concoction and only a few hours of sleep that I was able to get. So I am here with you. I'm happy to be here with you. Happy to be here. Still kind of on the road, but like I said, in a familiar place in my childhood home, broadcasting the show for you this morning. So I appreciate your patience, as it was a long night, a lot going on. Murph is on the road. I'm still on the road. So I'm happy to be here with you. Happy to be broadcasting on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports truly meets that thing called life. And I can't thank you enough for being here with us on the broadcast on Wake Up Call inside of the Great Lakes Honda City studios. So Murph is going to join us from on the road, so he'll be just on audio this morning as he is traveling. It's kind of fun here with Murph being on the road because Florida is, of course, my second home and the second hub of Dan Tortora broadcast media for a lot of reasons, with Wake Up Call as well as Do Diz with Dan. And so I've been on the road in Florida plenty of times doing the show over the years. And now Murph is on the road doing the show down in the great state of Florida in the second home of Wake Up Call and Dan Tortora broadcast media. So kind of fun that we get to switch roles here this morning. And of course, we're going to be talking about all postseason talk inside of the college football playoff as well as the NFL. The college football playoff has determined who will be the first national championship game of the expanded 12-team playoff, with the Ohio State Buckeyes of the Big Ten and Notre Dame, an independent, going up against each other. Notre Dame winning inside of the Capital One Orange Bowl down in Miami, Florida, and them winning that game over the Penn State Nittany Lions in a close one. And then we saw the Ohio State Buckeyes go up against the Texas Longhorns down in Arlington, Texas, in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, a game that I was on site on location for. And, of course, Ohio State had taken the early lead and eventually pulled away in that game to win it 28-14, courtesy of some second-half scoring and, of course, a huge defensive strip sack and return for a touchdown by Jack Sawyer. And Jack Sawyer, the former roommate of Quinn Ewers and strip sacking Quinn Ewers, made it for a very interesting story in that world. We'll talk about that and so much more, including my conversations with Quinn Ewers as well as Jahdae Barron and, of course, Will Howard and Jack Sawyer after the game in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic, which has set up our national championship game. You're here watching and listening on youtube.com and facebook.com, both /wakeupcalldt, and on wakeupcalldt.podbean.com. Good morning to Jerry and everybody out there. That's right, Jerry, raise some hell. Congratulations on your Washington Commanders winning the game. And he said, wake up the echoes here. Are we echoing, Jerry? If we're echoing, I'm sorry. Not meaning to echo here. But we're here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Like I said, still traveling and here with you coming back from Texas after a very late night of going on the plane. So we'll be talking about that. We'll talk about the NFL postseason as well, going through the wild card round, and we'll let you know what happened inside of the NFL with a bunch of games that went on. We still have one more wild card game to go, and it's going to be today. It's played in Arizona. It's going to be in Arizona due to the fact of the wildfires that are happening in California. And those wildfires have affected a lot of things, not just a football game. So what I would like to do this morning before we talk about anything with Murph is to take a moment of silence for those lives that have been lost, those lives that have been affected, and for everybody that needs the help and the prayers. So we'll take a moment of silence right now. And with that being said, I pray for the health, safety, happiness, and speedy recovery and full recovery of everyone whose lives have been affected and all of their loved ones. And may anything that's been lost be salvageable and, find a way back to it. Houses can be repaired and built and things can be bought. May they have all the resources that they have to do that. More importantly, may lives not be lost. And for those lives of those that did pass on, I pray that there's no more added to that number, and I pray that they're safe and sound in heaven, and that everyone is safe and sound, their loved ones are safe and sound, and that we can start to rebuild right now. It is a tragedy beyond a tragedy. It's a horrible, horrible thing, and I pray to God for health, safety, happiness, as I said, and for healing completely and for good, and no matter what, healing through God, and handling well whatever comes our way in and out of our control in Jesus' most precious name. And for those that have passed on and those loved ones that are here on earth, missing those that have passed on, that we may be safe and sound and together. Even in death, may we feel each other, know each other, and be with each other through God who destroyed our death and restored our life when Jesus died on the cross. In Jesus' name we pray, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. With that being said, we have Murphalation for the Nation here with us. And, of course, like I said, with the NFL playoffs, the Texans, Ravens, Bills, Eagles, and Commanders all getting victories. We'll see tonight in Glendale, Arizona, if it'll be the Vikings or if it'll be the Rams, as both teams will square off there on neutral ground due to those wildfires in our final NFL wildcard round game. So, with that being said, he's going to be a picture here today. We got his precious mug here up on the screen, so you'll see Murph's face because he's driving and we need to practice safety. Murph, how are you? See if we can bring him in.
I am good, my friend. How are you doing?
Doing very well. How's the trip been down to Florida? Why don't you catch us up on all of the stops you've made in the Sunshine State?
Well, there's only really been one so far. I'm actually just leaving Tampa, hence being in the car. I'm driving over to Orlando right now. But I came down to see my buddy Chris. We spent a couple days together, which was fun. We went out to a cool little billiards bar by his house, and we watched the Ohio State game on Friday night. We went to a card show on Saturday. Played a little poker at his buddy's house when we watched the Steelers game. My buddy's a Steelers fan, so a little disappointed for him. I was bummed, but at least it was over quickly. And then yesterday we went and played around golf at the course that he lives on, and had a great time. Came back, picked up the rental car, had dinner, and then sat outside by the bonfire and watched the Washington Bucks game, which was a phenomenal football game, by the way.
Yeah, very good. It was an awesome football game, awesome experience, a lot of fun to see both of those teams really get after it and make it a game. Of course, Jaden Daniels' heroics, it does, and I want to echo the sentiments of the broadcasters yesterday, the commentators, of saying that it makes you forget that the guy is a rookie. I did state at the beginning of the season, and I believe that has been successful. I actually posted them all yesterday. I had a bunch of preseason predictions for the NFL, and 3 of those predictions were quarterback-wise, and they had to do with Jaden Daniels as well as Bo Nix, who were both in action yesterday, and they had to do with Tommy DeVito. Those predictions were that Jaden Daniels would have the best rookie season of any 2024 rookie quarterback. I think that that's clear. And after that, I also think that my prediction on Bo Nix, that he would be the second best rookie quarterback of the 2024 class behind Jaden Daniels. I think that was proven with Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos making the postseason and having one of the best NFL turnarounds of last year to this year. And then I also predicted, and this was true as well, that Tommy DeVito would start at least one game for the New York Giants. So I want to thank each of those quarterbacks for helping me out with those preseason predictions. But the reason why I brought up those predictions, Jaden Daniels, absolutely phenomenal. Like I said, echoing Chris Collinsworth and Mike Tirico on stating that it makes you forget that Jaden Daniels is a rookie. The plays that he makes, the time, just his trust that he has in his blockers, be it a running back or an offensive lineman, stopping and just kind of waiting things out in the field, looking like he's going to pass, then maybe he's going to run, then he waits for someone to block for him, and then he kind of sneaks behind him, as well as when he's moving around and you think that he's done and he's going to go out of bounds and he launches the ball down the field. One of the best passes and catches that I've seen really in any game this season, college or pro, was in the first quarter where Jaden Daniels dropped back. I think it was on the first drive of the game. He dropped back and he just sent the ball, and Terry McLaurin is running his route. He's going a deep route downfield on the left sideline, and he is heavily blanketed by his defender, and Terry McLaurin just ran it, and Jaden trusted him from the jump, literally dropped back, saw him in single coverage, and sent the ball down the field, and it was put perfectly timed, and Terry McLaurin made an amazing catch. I don't even know how he saw this ball coming in. They both had to honestly trust each other. Terry had to put his arms out thinking that the ball was going to be there, and Jaden had to send it thinking that Terry was going to get there. And, I mean, Terry McLaurin, listen, this guy has been a 1,000-yard receiver in all of his seasons, outside of one season where he was just shy of it. He's been thrown to by, I think, I don't even know at this point, 5, 6 different quarterbacks with the Commanders. It doesn't matter. In a season, he'll be thrown to by 3 or 4 guys that are signal callers for the Commanders. And until they found their guy, which has been Jaden Daniels, and I hope it will be for a very long future, Terry is an incredible receiver, no matter who the quarterback is. Jaden has been what I said going into the season, arguably is going to be the best thing to happen to the Commanders in a long time, and I think that he definitely has been. But that play in and of itself just shows you the talent that's there. McLaurin, the talent that's been there. Austin Eckler, Brian Robinson Jr. Offensively, what these guys have been able to do. Defensively, it was a tall task yesterday with Marshawn Lattimore having to be on Mike Evans and eventually having to double team Mike Evans, because we talk about wide receivers. Who's better than Mike Evans in the NFL right now? And then you look at Baker Mayfield, and the guy that resurrected his career with the Rams and then truly resurrected it with Tampa Bay. Tom Brady retires. Baker Mayfield comes in. The question is Baker going to be able to be the guy? Will the team even make the playoffs? They haven't missed a beat without Tom Brady. They've continuously gone to the postseason. So as Murph set it up here, he said it was a fantastic game. And to give you some reasons why, Baker Mayfield, Marshawn Lattimore, and Mike Evans in that back and forth that they had, and obviously that was going on throughout the entire game, and all the way to the end where we have a doink, where we have a field goal attempt, hit the right upright, bounce inside, and stay within the 2 uprights. And if anybody knows about the Washington Commanders' woes at kicker this season, they had multiple guys brought in the preseason, multiple guys brought in camp, multiple guys of the regular season to get to where they are with Zane Gonzalez. So for them to win on that type of field goal is not crazy, and it's not strange, because of the fact that probably their biggest woe that they've had all season has been special teams with the kicking position. So just to give you some underbelly to what's going on with everything that Murph said, with this being a fantastic game, I'll hand it off to Murph now, as Jaden Daniels handed it off to Brian Robinson Jr. and Baker Mayfield tried to hand it off to Bucky Irving, who had some good moments, especially in the second half when we really got to see him. Murph, I'd love to get your thoughts here, but I wanted to give some ingredients to why this game was so good.
I think ultimately it just came down to the competitiveness and seeing both teams just not quit, right? I mean, you saw when the Bucks went down, they fought their way back. When the Commanders went down, they fought their way back, and we had a 20-20 game at the very end, and I'm sitting watching the game with my friend Chris, and when the Commanders scored the touchdown to get to 20 points, and I think he had said that he thought maybe both teams would get 2 more possessions when it was like 9 minutes left. I'm telling you, man, I don't think so. Like, I could see maybe one team gets 2 more. And in the end, each team got 1 more possession, and the Bucks went down the field and tied it. Bucky Irving had himself a great day.
Yeah.
But it wasn't quite enough. And I just want to mention, because I did go to a card show while I was down here, Bucks fans love Bucky Irving. I think that it's understated. Not enough people realize it, but Bucks fans love him. And I would not be shocked if he takes basically the entire, all the reps from Rachaad White next year. To the point where Rachaad White's basically just a backup as opposed to a dual threat like what you had with Zeke and Tony Pollard, the Cowboys back in the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he played a great game. The Bucs played a great game. Baker looked like he was doing what he needed to do, and Mike Evans made a couple of acrobatic plays and kept the Bucs in it. They tie the game, and then the Commanders get the ball back, waste 4 minutes, go down the field, and doink the field goal. We're watching that. I see it go off the upright. Now he's rooting for the Bucs naturally because he lives down here. He's a Steelers fan, but he's kind of adopted a second team in most of the Tampa Bay teams, like the Bucs and the Lightning and the Tampa Bay Rays, teams like that. But yeah, he was a little disappointed they lost. But for Jaden Daniels' sports card market, that was very nice for me.
Yeah.
Not so much for Bo Nix because they got blown out by the Bills, but yeah, I got a bunch of Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix that are their Prism stuff that's coming in when I get back next week. So I'm basically sending those straight to PSA as soon as I get home. I already got 20 cards on the way there now. I got another probably close to 20 that I'm going to be sending as soon as I get back. So the more we can get out there, the more this will be worth, which would be nice.
Yeah.
But that game was just fun to watch. I mean, both teams were just nobody quit. It was a very competitive game. Nobody really made all that many mistakes. There were a lot of penalties, but no there was a mental error, but there weren't any physical errors, which, any coach will tell you they hate mental errors because those are hard to fix. You can fix physical errors.
Yeah.
But you don't really see too many, physical errors, with the exception of that 4th down where the Commanders got stopped when there probably should have been a pass interference call in the end zone. They didn't call it. 2 or 3 plays later, the Bucs fumble and the Commanders get it back. So if you know ball don't lie. It was pass interference, and they got the ball back, and then eventually went in and scored. So good for them on that. But it was a great game. It was a really fun one to watch, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the Commanders can do, because they play the Lions, right? No. They play Eagles?
The Washington Commanders, so stepping forward here in this right now, we will see it is still the Commanders are going to play the Lions because they're the 6th seed. So whoever wins the Rams, Vikings is the 4-5 will play the Eagles, and the Commanders obviously get the lowest seeded team, so they'll have, the Lions get the lowest seeded team, so they'll have the Commanders.
So I guess Dan Campbell won't see the Vikings in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That was such a funny line at the end of that game, man. That was funny.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to this game tonight. I'm probably going to find a spot in Orlando to go watch it. I don't know if I'm I don't know if I'm going to watch it at the hotel or if I want to just, go somewhere to watch it, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But I'm looking. That's going to be a fun one. Obviously, they moved the game to Arizona because of the wildfires in LA. It's horrible to see it. We can get into. We don't need to get into anything the specifics of it because that can go on for an hour. But praying for the safety of everybody out there, and but they had to move the game to Arizona, and we have an awesome football game, even though I do think the Vikings probably take care of business. But, that'll be a fun one. And so anytime Matt Stafford with the Rams is in the playoffs, it's you can't count them out.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. And the Vikings the Vikings have had themselves a tremendous season. Vikings 14 wins still gets them a wild card. That's how good that division was with the NFC North, and that's how seeding happens. We'll talk about seeding with the college football playoff and seeding when it comes to the NFL playoffs, as you know, is that the top 4 seeds go to the teams that have won those 4 divisions on the respective side, the AFC and the NFC, and obviously the top is the best record. So you have 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you have your wild cards 5, 6, and 7. Within the last few years here, they added that 7th spot instead of having 6. And so with those wild cards, even if you have a fantastic record like the Minnesota Vikings do at 14-3, because they didn't have the best record in their division, they were fighting for either the 1st spot or the 5th spot, and they end up getting the 5th spot, which is crazy, but they got to go on the road. But here's the benefit here. They don't really have to go on the road because they're not going to the Rams. They're going to the Cardinals Stadium, so it is being played on neutral ground. So in a weird way, maybe that kind of helps out Minnesota. I mean, they're still farther away from home than LA is, but playing on neutral ground, having a 14-win season, and really not deserving to play a road game, maybe that'll help them out in a little bit here under the extenuating and sad circumstances that we have in Los Angeles. And, the Rams, a team that's been overlooked, a team that's been underappreciated, a team that can't be counted out. I mean, I would like to see the Vikings continue this beautiful season and really a season that not many people saw coming. I would love to see that continue. At the same time, I'd love to see the Rams win for Los Angeles and give them something to kind of lean on and focus on. So this is a game where, I think you got a team that's kind of flying under the radar in the Rams, and then you got a team in the Vikings where there's a lot of expectation, I think, now. So we'll see what happens in that game. But in the other games, the Texans manhandled the Chargers in the first playoff game here for Jim Harbaugh since winning the college football playoff with Michigan last year under investigation. He gets into the NFL and back to the NFL, and they win. They get into the playoffs. The Chargers do. Both LA teams get in. So something that's been atypical here for the Rams and the Chargers historically, right? Because both of these teams were not in Los Angeles. Then they struggled. The Rams struggled in St. Louis. The Chargers struggled in San Diego. Then they found their way into SoFi Stadium, sharing the stadium, both getting into the postseason. So some positive notes here for Los Angeles and for both of these franchises. But the Houston Texans knocked Jim Harbaugh out of this playoff after he won the college football playoff, loses in the first NFL playoff game that he has. But a total credit to him and his team. Keenan Allen's not on the team anymore. Mike Williams isn't on the team. Austin Eckler isn't on the team. So I had said when he became the coach, I had said 2 things. I said Jim Harbaugh, in my opinion, if he doesn't come back to the NFL this year, I don't think he's ever coming back. So that was one of my predictions. And then I said if he does come back, the only team that I see him going to is the Chargers. That came true. And then, I mean, we've seen what he's done here. And then I also said within the first couple of years that he's there, I said probably within the next 2 years he has to have a plan of life without Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Austin Eckler because they're getting older and they get injured every year pretty much, sadly, and hopefully that doesn't continue. And a lot of times they get injured together. Like there's more than one of those guys that's out. Well, he got rid of them faster than I thought he would, all in the offseason. He brings in Ladd McConkey, who I predicted would have a good rookie season. Dude balled out. He had almost 200 yards, 9 catches, 197 yards in this loss. He had an 86-yard touchdown, I believe, in this game. And the Los Angeles Chargers have a bright future with him and with Justin Herbert and with Jim Harbaugh as their coach. He makes the playoffs in his first season as the head coach. So a lot of great there for the Chargers. But people underestimated the Houston Texans because they've been up and down. I said in the preseason that I thought that this was a team that could vie for the Super Bowl. I thought that this was a playoff team that could threaten the Chiefs. And the Houston Texans, albeit in this matchup, and I don't know why I did this. I think I ultimately went with Papa Joe and went with the Chargers. Not that I went with Papa Joe, but that I picked the Chargers in this game. And I was thinking about that when I was watching this game. I'm like, why did I pick the Chargers in this game? Like, did I really want to believe the narrative that Houston was just not that good and that they were fizzling out? So I definitely kind of buyer's remorse on that, and this was before the end result of the game. I was just kind of sitting there at the beginning of the game watching it saying, why didn't I pick Houston? Because I know Houston better than that. I'd like to think I do. But they came up strong, and credit to them. They did a fantastic job, and they showed up. D'Amico Ryans once again and his team, and they won 32-12. So they got that victory there, and I'd love to get Murph's thoughts. We're going to go through these NFL playoff games before we go to the college football playoff. So, Murph, the Texans win by 20. They did not score in the first quarter, which is the only quarter they were down 6-0. Then they went and scored in every single quarter from there, 10, 10, and 12. So they had double-digit points in every quarter after that. Just your overall take on this. C.J. Stroud had 1 passing touchdown. He was 22 of 33. Not a crazy day. 282 yards. Joe Mixon had over 100 yards. He had a touchdown, but he kept drives alive. And then on the other side of it, Ladd McConkey had one of the best days of any wide receiver you're going to see in the NFL in any season. Once again, 9 catches and 197 yards on those 9 catches. So your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I picked the Chargers too. I was not expecting them to play as poorly as they did. But yeah, I think it's more credit to the Texans and C.J. Stroud and what they were able to do on their home turf. I think the home field advantage does play a big factor more than we think, right? Because you have typically the 4-5 game is the worst division champion and the best wild card team, and you assume that the best wild card team can easily beat the worst division winner, and that might be the case, but you got to factor in the fact that the division winner is playing at home. Sometimes those home field advantages are bigger than you think. It seemed to be the case in Houston. We know it's the case in college football. We don't have to worry about that, ever. But in the NFL, there's certain places that you go in a 4-5 game that are not easy places to go play, right? No one wants to go play, let's just say the Eagles with the 4 seed. Nobody would want to go to Philly, right? I'm sure the Commanders are happier that they're going to Detroit than they're going to Philly. I'm sure Detroit's a better team and they'd rather play Philly, but Philly is a hostile environment for anybody, right? So in the Chargers case, Houston's got a passionate fan base. People don't necessarily think that, but football in Texas is a lot bigger than people, some people that aren't from Texas think. If you've ever seen a high school football stadium in the state of Texas, you would think you're looking at a Division I high school, college football stadium. They 30, 40, 50,000 people. It's absurd. But football in Texas, they say everything's bigger in Texas. Football is.
Yeah.
So you got to give credit to the Houston Texans fans for showing out in this game. And C.J. Stroud did his thing. He didn't do anything spectacular, but he did enough to win. That's the important thing that that they're doing at this point. So, I like what they did. I would have liked to see the Chargers win because I like Herbert and I like Matt McConkey, and it would have been cool to see Harbaugh maybe try to make a run at winning the Super Bowl immediately after winning the college football playoff. But yeah, it was it was cool to watch. That was a good game too. It was a better game than I think the score indicates. But as we do typically see wild card weekend, there are a handful of blowouts, and I'm sure we're getting to the Bills game anytime now, but there's always a handful of blowouts on wild card weekend. I think it's just the first round of the playoffs in general. Because you get those teams that sneak into the playoffs that, really aren't good enough to be there, but they made the playoff because they made the playoffs because they won enough games and they won their division, or they stuck in with that last wild card, things like that.
Yeah, no, and this is, you look at both of these teams, like you said. I mean, it'd be nice. I mean, we saw the Harbaugh Bowl on Monday Night Football. We could have seen it potentially again if these teams kept on winning, but we're not going to see that. On the other side of it, though, speaking of the Harbaugh Bowl, who's the other Harbaugh? That's John Harbaugh, and John Harbaugh, he knows what it is to win a Super Bowl. He knows what it is to have a successful team. And my prediction when Lamar Jackson was a rookie was that they transition the offense right to him. They bring him in. They didn't have a known identity or anything on that offense, right? They had Joe Flacco and whatnot, but I felt like the team was in need of something. And I thought, bring him in right now, bring him into camp, and in training camp, transition everything to him, give him the team, build the offense around him. That was my prediction. They eventually ended up doing that. He played early on, and I also predicted that he would be a good quarterback in the NFL. I felt like I did that to a room full of crickets. I think there was me and two crickets in that room when I said Lamar Jackson would be a good quarterback in the NFL. And I loved his quote when he had that initial game where I think he had 5 passing touchdowns, and somebody in the media asked him what he thought about the game, and he said pretty good for a running back. And so Lamar Jackson has obviously more than proven himself. By the way, this year, 41 touchdowns to 4 interceptions going into this wild card game. He gets 2 more touchdowns, no interceptions. He has 43 touchdowns to 4 interceptions this season. I'll echo what he said before, pretty good for a running back. And I guess that prediction was right. Lamar Jackson is somebody I covered in college. Spent a couple seasons interviewing him when he was at Louisville, and his head coach about him, Bobby Petrino at the time, with the Louisville Cardinals. Dude's a talent. If you didn't know, now you know. His numbers are not just great this season. They've been great, but this season they've gotten even better. The dude's gotten even better with time, with that big contract. Was he sitting out? Was he injured? What was going on there? But he got his money. The team continues to build around him. The question is, can this team win? Can they win on the road if they have to do that? You know what I mean? Which is coming up here in Buffalo at Orchard Park. So there's a lot of big questions coming up. But 43 touchdowns this season to 4 interceptions. And then the other prediction that I had was that you don't get rid of generational running backs when the NFL has this mentality of you draft a running back. If he's really good, you ride him out to the end of his contract, and then you let somebody else pay for him because no running back that's going toward the age of 30 is worth spending money on, and 30's too old for a running back, and we can't have these guys on the team, and just stupid comments. And it's funny because I defended guys like Derrick Henry and have perennially talked about, guys like himself and stated that there are guys out there that are worth it. And whatever this 30 and 31-year-old BS rule is about you can't keep a guy that's in his early 30s because he's washed up as a running back, and that there's exceptions to the rules, and that there's running backs that I would take at any age, like a Derrick Henry. Well, what has he done in his first year in Baltimore? They're in the playoffs. They've moved ahead, and the guy came into this wild card game with 1,921 yards, averaging 5.9 yards a carry, 325 carries. He added 26 carries to that 325. He needed 79 yards to get to 2,000 yards this season. He took that 79 and raised you 107 and ended this game with 186 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, 7.2 yards a carry. And so now the man has over 2,000 yards rushing in his only season with the Baltimore Ravens, and in his early 30s for a quote-unquote washed-up running back. So, like, it's pretty good for a running back for Lamar Jackson that didn't think that he would be a good quarterback. I guess it's pretty good for an old man in his early 30s, as Derrick Henry has over 2,000 yards rushing. Love that this guy is doing it. And by the way, Tennessee, the team didn't want to keep him and pay for him and pay for that washed-up old running back. Not saying that they said that, just making a statement on the fact that they didn't keep this generational talent. What happened when Derrick Henry left? His team's in the playoffs. He has 2,000 plus yards, and they're moving forward to the next round, the divisional round. Where's Tennessee without Derrick Henry? They're the worst team in the NFL, 32 of 32, which has garnered them the number 1 overall draft pick in 2025. They should take a running back. So with that being said, Ashton Jetty's available. With that being said, Murph, love to get your thoughts on a 28-14 win by the Ravens. Round 3 against the Steelers. The Steelers won one of them. The Ravens won another. So this was the tie-breaking game this season. And Baltimore seemingly commanded this game all the way through. George Pickens tried to make something of it early on, but he had pass interference pushing off before he caught the ball. And George Pickens did end the game with a touchdown. Isaiah Likely did a good job in this game. The two leading guys receiving-wise are Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews. They didn't have to do much because Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson on the ground, just the two of them, had 267 yards rushing of the 299. 299 yards rushing for Baltimore, 29 yards rushing for Pittsburgh, 17 of those yards coming from Najee Harris, who did not have a strong season. Russ the Bus, he did go 20 of 29, 270, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. But I'd love to get your thoughts, Murph, on Lamar Jackson, who a lot of people didn't think would be a good quarterback in the NFL, and to Derrick Henry, who some people thought was a washed-up old man in his early 30s.
Well, one of those people that did not like Lamar Jackson was me. I will own that. I have said for years that I thought he was a poor man's Michael Vick. I still kind of do, but the 2 MVPs now kind of, makes me, does he have 2 or only 1?
Lamar Jackson right now, I'm trying to think of it now. I know there's a lot of hope that he's going to get this one, but his MVPs, you're making me think about this now. He had, let's see here, how many MVPs? A 2-time recipient. Yeah, he's got 2.
I was going to say, I thought he had one. It might have been 2020 or something like that.
Yeah, he's got 2.
But yeah, like, at this point, 2 MVPs, finally winning some playoff games, like, I guess I can own it. I still don't like him. I didn't say it before, but I think Jaden Daniels is a better version of Lamar Jackson that we'll see in a couple of years. Because I think he throws a better ball. I think he throws a better deep ball. I think he's just as good with his legs as Lamar. And he's a little smaller, but I could see him, bulking up a little bit and building into that frame. But regardless, Lamar got his money. The Ravens paid him because he deserved it. And, I look now and see what I see happening with Tennessee and think, man, like, if only they would have kept Derrick Henry, maybe they would have been at least relevant this year. But at the same time, I don't know that they actually would have been relevant because the Tennessee Titans did not have a quarterback that could do anything. So what's the point of even having Derrick Henry if that's the case? So in a way, I'm not surprised that they didn't pay him and they let him go to somewhere else so they could try to win something. However, he falls into the Ravens' lap. He pairs really well with Lamar Jackson, runs for almost 2,000 yards very quietly because everybody was on Saquon for that, who also, by the way, was a free agent running back that went to the Philadelphia Eagles. It's surprising that you see these teams giving, just letting these generational guys go. But I think there's a difference between guys like Saquon and Derrick Henry and other players. Because they talk about like a Frank Gore. He was always a good player. He was a decent player after after his best days in San Francisco. But at the same time, he was never like this elite running back that you're going to pay all this money to over 30. The one name that I keep coming back to at that is Le'Veon Bell. But the issue with Le'Veon Bell and the biggest difference between him and Saquon and Derrick Henry is the fact that he took a year off in his prime. So by him taking that year off, he comes to the Jets and just did nothing. And I think that was in part because of the way the Jets used him and the fact that Adam Gase was coaching that team. But regardless, I thought the Ravens were in control from the opening kickoff. That game was an absolute blowout. Don't let that score fool you. They blew the Steelers out. It was not remotely close. So I look at that game and I see everything that the Ravens did, and I see what Derrick Henry was able to do, and it doesn't surprise me one bit. Now they play. Who do they play?
The Bills.
The Bills. That's right. That's going to be a much tougher test. Now, let me ask you a question, because you would know more than I would. Do they vote for MVP before the playoffs, like they do in baseball?
That was something that I was thinking about yesterday when I was on the plane, and I was sitting here thinking to myself, I'm like, so the NFL MVP is something that you're supposed to just focus. I mean, in the regular season, you're supposed to focus on the regular season. And I'm looking at this right now. Does playing in the playoffs affect the decision who will become MVP? It says, with Lamar being paid, the MVP is already decided because some people who vote for the All-Pro teams also vote for MVP. So you could put in your voting. I'm looking at this right now. Voting format for NFL MVP undergoing major change starting with the 2022 season. So let me look at this here right now. The NFL's MVP award isn't actually handed out by the NFL. It's voted on by the Associated Press, and the AP announced they'll be making some major. Under the old format, the AP's 50 voters were only allowed to name one player. Starting this year, each voter can rank their top 5. Yada, yada, yada. The essence of that, okay, it's not clear how the votes will be tallied. There's a sort of weighted system. The APs will give voters more say, but it won't add more. Okay, and none that we've seen the MVP winners at least, okay. The only MVP winner over the past decade who didn't get at least that. So that's not stating when. I know it's supposed to be for the regular season only, but it doesn't come out until we're in the playoffs. So you wonder sometimes if it can affect the vote.
I know baseball, it gets voted on the final day of the regular after the final day of the regular season, and they just don't announce it until November. I just wasn't sure if football is kind of the same way, that they vote before the postseason, which I think would make sense. If they don't, I think whoever wins that game next week is the MVP. Almost regardless. But if it's already voted on, then it's it is what it is. I personally still think it's Josh Allen, but that's just me. If the Bengals had made the playoffs, I think it would without question have been Joe Burrow, but they didn't. And I think they have a little gripe about that because the Dolphins didn't play, they couldn't play Tua, and they looked like a team that didn't want to be there, so they lost to the Jets. And, the Chiefs didn't play anybody because they were the top seed. So they got embarrassed by the Broncos, and I wouldn't even call that being embarrassed because nobody played. So I don't know. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see that matchup next week.
Yeah, and like I said, I was thinking about that too on the plane. I mean, I would imagine you have to have your votes in before, because if they don't want the NFL playoffs, if they don't want the postseason to affect the regular season MVP voting, then it would make sense that you would have to have it in before, because undoubtedly, if you don't have to submit by a certain deadline until we're in the NFL playoffs, then it's going to affect people's decisions what happens in the playoffs. So I would think that the voting's got to be submitted before. I do know, like, collegiately, that when we're voting, we're supposed to have, I'm trying to think back on when I had to have all my votes in. I'm pretty sure we had to have them in before the college football playoff. Yeah, I think it was before the college football playoff started. So, you know, I would imagine if you don't want the postseason to affect votes, that you get the votes in before that. I do want to make something to be known here, though. With Lamar Jackson in the regular season, because we can't count those 2 touchdowns this in the NFL wildcard weekend toward the NFL MVP, because it's supposed to be regular season. He's, 41 passing touchdowns to 4 interceptions. And the guy can run. I mean, we're looking at a guy who's had an incredible season. But on the other side, with Josh Allen, I want to let you know some things here. Josh Allen entered the season without Stephon Diggs and without Gabe Davis. He entered the season without his number 1 target and his number 2 target. So that's something to be noted. Josh Allen also became the first player with 40 or more touchdowns in 5 straight seasons. So as great as it is to see Lamar have 41 to 4 interceptions, Josh Allen is the first player in NFL history to have 40 or more touchdowns in 5 straight seasons. And he's the first to have 3 passing and 3 rushing touchdowns in a game. He's also the only quarterback in NFL history to record a passing, rushing, and receiving touchdown in the same game. So when you look at this, and you just strictly
on the same play for 2 of those, actually.
Right. So when you look at the when you look at this, yeah, because he completed a pass to his receiver, and then his receiver pitched the ball to him as he was running by in that snow-filled game in Buffalo. So when you look at what Josh Allen has done in the regular season, to look at strictly Lamar Jackson and say, wow, this guy is an amazing talent, and he's already won 2 MVPs, and he had 41 touchdowns passing, and he has rushing touchdowns, and he only had 4 interceptions. When you see that 40 plus, and people think, wow, he's pretty good for a guy that a lot of us didn't think was going to be a good quarterback. We just thought he was going to run the ball, which is not what I thought. But when people look at Lamar Jackson and say 41 to 4, and we thought he wasn't going to be able to throw the ball well, that might affect a vote. When we look at the fact that he's such a good runner, that might affect the vote. When we look at the fact that he's a 2-time MVP, that might affect the vote. But when you strictly look at this season, which is what you're supposed to do when it comes to college football, when it comes to the NFL, when it comes to college basketball, when it comes to anything, you're supposed to look at this season strictly, not the other seasons. This is why I have a gripe with college football stuff. That's why I have a gripe with some NFL stuff, is you're supposed to just look at this season. And just looking at this season, Josh Allen lost his top 2 targets. And arguably some people might say, well, they weren't. Dalton Kincaid is his 1 or his 2. But he lost 2 of his receiving targets. And he became the first player in NFL history with 40 or more touchdowns in 5 straight seasons. 3 passing touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns in a game. First player to do that. And the only quarterback to have a passing, rushing, and receiving touchdown in the same game in the same season. Like, when we look at all of that and we put that all into one season, how do you give Lamar the MVP, saying, wow, that guy's really good, he's 1-2, and he had 41 touchdowns, and then you say, yeah, but Josh Allen's had at least 40 touchdowns passing, or he's had 40 or more touchdowns in 5 straight seasons. We're not talking about just this season, we're talking about 5 in a row. So to that, he blows Lamar out of the water, and to the record books of 3 rushing and 3 passing and 3 rushing in a game, and a passing, receiving, and rushing touchdown all in the same game, to be the only quarterback in NFL history. I don't think there's any question whatsoever that Josh Allen should win this. As much as I love Lamar, and as much as I can argue Lamar till the cows come home, because I was one of the only people that thought Lamar would be successful in the NFL, I have to give it to Josh Allen, because if we're strictly looking at the regular season, strictly looking at this season, I have no idea how you can look at Lamar's 41 to 4 and say, okay, but look at what Josh Allen has done. Look at the success he has done. And if I follow my own argument and say don't look at any other season and don't look at the 40 or more streak, I'm looking at that strictly for saying Lamar has 41. And then I'm like, yeah, but Josh has had 40 or more in 5 straight years. If we just look at this season, he's made NFL history in 2 cases, plus having over 40 touchdowns like Lamar. So they both got 40 or more touchdowns in the regular season, and NFL history lies on the side of Josh Allen. If we take away the last 4 years and we take away that streak, what quarterback has done what he's done? Nobody in NFL history for the things that I've named.
100%. I mean, but you also have to. The thing I don't think it gets factored in as much as it should is the actual title of the award, the most valuable player. In part, you think of what these guys have done all year. Lamar got Derrick Henry this year. Lamar had receivers break out. He had a tight end break out in Isaiah Likely. He had plenty of pieces around him. You know, does that team still make the playoffs without him, with somebody else? Probably, as long as they're competent. The Bills without Josh Allen are probably 5-12. Josh Allen, when that team lost Stephon Diggs, when that team lost Gabe Davis, yes, Dalton Kincaid came back. Yes, they got Amari Cooper later in the year.
Yeah.
But that team had nothing. It was down to skin and bones and Josh Allen, and that was it. We all thought they were going to come in 3rd place in the AFC East. We all thought it was going to be Jets, Dolphins, Bills. Not only do they win the AFC East, they win it by a lot, and they get the number 2 seed behind Kansas City.